So, as Beffer have said before in his journal, if you want to look to one single area where conflict has mostly impacted, you should take a look at the team performance. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ayya, and allow me to guide you through my research on finding the factors that can help the recovery of team performance after an internal conflict. So, we take a look at the background itself. Entrepreneurs plays a crucial role in driving economic growth and development, especially in countries like Indonesia, where our number of entrepreneurs is still relatively very low. So, to promote the economic growth, government has supported ITB, one of the universities in Indonesia, to establish a school for entrepreneurship, which is School of Business and Management that has an entrepreneurship department, where student is mandatory to make startups within their 3.5 years of educational years. So we take a look at the problem itself. So even though there's the startups that the student made is still in educational realm, well, where the mentors are still there, they are still inevitably experience conflict. So unresolved conflicts in one of the startups, in one of my past startups, which is Filin, has led to decreased team performance and discomfort. As you can see in here, there are decreased team performance measured by OKR, and conflict are not resolved, lowering team trust and commitment. And not only feeling, but many companies in entrepreneurship batch 2002 has experienced conflict that they cannot simply recover. So as we see in here, there are startups that cannot resolve their conflicts. However, despite these startups, some startups are successfully resolving their conflicts. So it comes to a question. So this is the research questions. What are the factors that can help those startups resolve their conflicts and recover their team performance after an internal conflicts? And what kind of recommendation that we can provide to the entrepreneurship educational organizations to help business students in responding to internal conflict that they simply cannot go. So there's scopes and limitations, of course. So the limitations itself that we only take the respondents from entrepreneurship major batch that reach conflict resolution and team performance recovery. And the variable tested are also like conflict resolution variables that are from the journals that have been tested. Therefore, active listening, empathy, open communication, and negotiation. So we come to the theoretical foundation. There are theories that define this research. So the conflict definition itself is a process where one party perceives its interest, its norm, and its values or its opinion are being opposed, hurt, or countered by another party. So conflict is not something that can be avoided. So when people work collaboratively, conflict will always arise. So it is important to know not to completely avoid the conflict, but how to minimize the risk and the effect itself. So it is a new insight also that conflict itself is neither good or bad, but the conflict management itself or the way it is handled determine whether it is constructive or destructive. So conflict surprisingly can be constructive. So how do we make this conflict constructive? So conflict can be constructive when they have reached conflict resolution. So what is conflict resolution? Conflict resolution is the process of finding a peaceful and mutually acceptable solution to a conflict. So what are the signs of successful conflict resolution? This one I take as the base theory for when I find my respondents, whether I take it, how do I measure that it is successful startups that can resolve their conflict. So in successful conflict resolution, there are individual satisfaction, but there are also recovery of relationship where there are trust, respect, and affection, and also team collaboration, where there are more open exchange of information, they're willing to collaborate more, and there are more integrative decisions. So these are the conflict resolution variables that this research take. So the first one is active listening. So active listening involves like you listen to other people opposing perspective, and you develop a neutral attitude to that. So active listening is important in the area of conflict because it allows another party to understand the needs and the concerns of the other party, of the opposing party. And surprisingly, active listening itself cannot go without empathy. So empathy in conflict resolution is essential. So it can help the teams to understand the other party's key concern and sacred values. And the third one is open communication. So it is important that when in conflicts in journal, it is stated that you address the problems that in the conflict itself. So if you don't address the problem, the conflict will make it like a time bomb. So when the conflict is addressed, it usually comes from when parties can openly communicate without fear. So and the fourth one is negotiation. So negotiation is a direct process of dialogue between parties who are faced with conflict to reach a mutual agreement that meets the need of all parties involved. So those variables in those journals are proven to have positive relation to conflict resolution that can go to the team performance. So what are the correlation between team performance and conflict resolution? So conflict resolution is proven to have an important predictor of team performance. So if you are successful in resolving your conflict, you'll have the recovery of team performance. Um, so if you don't resolve your conflict, you won't have a good team performance because you don't collaborate more, you're not willing to communicate with each other, and those things is simple, but it can make major change in the business and the performance. So these are the conceptual frameworks where the conflict resolution variables can positively help the successful conflict resolution. And with a successful conflict resolution, you can have a recovery of team performance. And this is the methodology. We will go fast in this phase. So there are problem identification. So the first one is I take problem identification stage to analyze what has caused this low of team performance. And this has come to the identification of because the conflict is not fully resolved, we cannot go to recovery of team performance. So these are the other stage that we take. So for this methodology, we take purposive sampling, and the data collection itself will use multiple case study. We will take multiple startups that has resolved their conflicts and recover their performance, and we will use semi-structured interview with these questions. That the question itself has been from the theory of the theory that I have mentioned earlier, and this is a more detailed look to how this question has been formed. Okay, and then so the data analysis, because we want to look at the pattern of multiple startups, we'll take qualitative thematic analysis. So we'll see what are the patterns, and we also validate through data triangulation with a combination of interviews and FGD. So after that, we'll take conclusion and recommendation from those patterns, and we come to the result itself. So what are the results? So we take the data collection from two startup teams that have resolved their conflicts and recovered their team performance, and we have reached data saturation. So um, first, in the question, we asked about the conflict type and resolution. So because it is a case study, we want to look at the what kind of conflict itself that is happening, because conflict is unique to each startups. And yes, there are different type of conflict within those startups and different type of severity itself. But surprisingly, when we ask open-ended questions to them, the respondents across the team answer similar strategies of conflict resolution. And they have mentioned something that is similar to the variables that have been mentioned earlier in those journal, in those conceptual framework, without me asking first about it. So uh, yes, active listening is proven to positively related to the conflict resolution, but there are more to itself. So I have gained the insight that it is needs to be two-way active listening. You need to understand both of the parties needs to actively listening to each other's perspective, and it is not enough that you only actively listen to them, but you have to show that you understand. How do you show it? For a simple thing, you can restate what they are saying, and you can ask questions following up their concern and their perspective after they have explained it to you. So yeah, active listening cannot go without empathy, and empathy is positively related to conflict resolution. But the insight that I have take more is that act of empathy, the empathy itself, mutual understanding and validation of understanding, you validated, you understand, is not enough. When you want to have a conflict resolution, a successful one, you need to understand that the other parties have no intention of harm. So when parties understand each other doesn't have a harmful intention, they only want to have the best thing in their business based on their perspective, it is more likely for them to forgive the opposing party without even them having the best solution. They just understand, okay, they don't have harmful intention. So the third one, yes, open communication also positively related to the conflict resolution and to the team performance. But there are the more insight that I have take is that open communication is not just simply just there. You have to make um, as a supportive environment where people is not afraid about talking their concerns. And also when you communicate your problems, you need to take it with private, so it is an open communication. You stated what you want to state without fear, but you have to make it private within the parties that has conflicted, and with a mannerful and empathetic communication. You cannot say you cannot communicate openly but with really bad words. You have to be mannerful to reach the conflict resolution. So the negotiation itself, yes, it helps the more a successful conflict resolution. So I have gained that the two startups both use negotiation and non-negotiation uh, to resolve their conflicts. But negotiation itself helps them to have a more satisfying and addressing all members' need. However, even though they don't use negotiation, they use inequal decision making. Sometimes one people just stated, okay, this is the solution without taking others people concern, or they use majority rules, which is voting, and it's not always middle ground. Sometimes it still can lead, and yes, it still can lead to uh, conflict resolution. So how can this happen? So after I asked more, um, not every requires the skill of negotiation to reach conflict resolution. So because there are factors that I call buffering factors, um, conflict can still be resolved even though it is not a win-win solution, because there are common understanding that each member only aims the best in their own perspective. So when you understand that the other people is only doing their best, is committed to what they are doing, they have the same vision as you, and you have reached common understanding, you are most likely to forgive them, even though the solution is not the best. And this is the conclusion. So the conclusion is like, yeah, okay, active listening, empathy with the recognition of no harmful intentions, open communication with private and mindful and empathetic communication does positively impacted to conflict resolution. And also negotiation can help with successful conflict resolution, but it's not substantially needed because there are buffering factors that I have mentioned earlier. And it's also regarding to what kind of conflicts that the startup has been facing. Sometimes they do need mediators that are not a part of negotiation. And that's how it is correlated. So the recommendation itself, when in individual level, you have to identify your own passion and find the partner who are aligned with your vision. Because when you are aligned with your partner's vision, it is more likely for you to resolve your conflict more easily. And you have to practice openness, active listening, and empathy before making your own startup. On organizational level, leaders should emphasize on the importance of shared vision. So when all your members team have shared vision, they have the same vision as you. As I have said before, it is more likely for them to resolve their conflict more easily. And you have to build a supportive environment where individuals feel comfortable and expressing their opinions or concerns. And for educational level, you can educational team can incorporate lessons on open communication, empathy, and active listening. And also, they can have also private support by teaching teams and assisting them in resolving their conflicts. That is also private. So that's all from me. A little and words that conflict can be constructed if handled correctly. Thank you so much.